Good morning, everyone. Thank you so much for being here. And I want to thank very quickly Dee and June for putting together the WE Network and bringing us all here together this morning. So thank you very much for having us. We should also note that Dee just had a baby boy 5 weeks ago and still managed to put this on. So I think for that she deserves a big round of applause. As was mentioned, I am a journalist, most recently with the Wall Street Journal Digital Network, and currently I work for All Things Digital, which is a tech website devoted mainly to consumer tech coverage. But my resume pales in comparison to some of the women that are sitting next to me today. To start, we've got Kay Koplovitz. I'm going to read off of the bios that were provided with the program, but seriously, their resumes are so incredibly long and impressive that it would probably take the whole time, so I'll shorten them. Kay is the founder of USA Network. You may have heard of that. She's the first woman network president, founder, CEO in television history. Incredibly impressive. She's the author of Bold Women, Big Ideas, which came out in May of 2002, which she wrote to inform and inspire female entrepreneurs. In 2000, she co-founded Springboard Enterprises. It's an organization that fosters venture capital investments. Basically, she's seeing women through to prominent positions in business and leadership. I'm really looking forward to hearing more from Kay today. Next up, we have Joy Marcus. It would probably be impressive enough to say that she's a graduate of Princeton, New York University Law School, started her career out in M&A law, worked for MTV, but it goes beyond that. She joined DFJ Gotham Ventures as a venture partner in May 2011. She recently led the firm's seed investment in Daily Worth, and prior to joining DFJ Gotham Ventures, Joy was general manager US for video website Daily Motion, which you may have heard of. It was acquired by Orange in January 2011. And prior to Daily Motion, she was SVP of Global Marketing at Time Warner, and she also served as VP of Business Development at BarnesandNoble.com, which went public in 1999, and she was very much a part of that. She also has 2 children, lives in Manhattan with her husband. And then last but certainly not least, we have Megan Quinn. Megan is a partner of Kleiner Perkins. You may have heard that. And she focuses on consumer internet investments. And prior to that, she worked at Square, a very hot mobile payment startup that you also may have heard of. And prior to Square, she worked at Google for 7 years, where she worked on development of Google Maps. So I joked about this before, but it's true. Any of you that have the new iPhone, Megan will be standing in the corner offering directions later. With her vast
and
knowledge.
ranting a little bit about the Apple Maps at the same time.
Yes, exactly. Megan wants to state that she is impartial, of course, to her investments, but yes, but she is offering directions for Google Maps. Yeah, there was some interesting data actually that was put out in the program. I'm not sure if you saw that, but very quickly I'll go through some of it. Women are launching companies at a rate 1.5 times higher than the national average, and yet they're receiving less than 10% of venture funding. Women make up only 9% of board members of Silicon Valley companies. And at the leading 25 venture capital firms, only 9% of investment professionals are women. And I have more data too that we're going to be discussing, and some of it may be really interesting to you. But we'll get to that as we go through the panel. So our goals today, I think, are not only to determine why this is happening or what is happening in terms of women-funded startups, but what we can do to fix it, right? And I think that with this panel here, we've got the best people to address this topic. And since it's pretty early on a Sunday morning and you're all probably thinking, well, I'm normally reading the paper in bed right about now, we really want to make this worth your while and give you some solid takeaways. Because I can tell you as a journalist, one of the worst things is when you walk away from a panel or an interview and you say, I don't actually have a solid takeaway. So we want to send you home today with some really clear bullet points of how, if you are a female entrepreneur, you are starting your own business, what you can do to better your situation and basically raise money for your business. Now, to start, what I'd like to do, because I like hearing personal stories, is to go through the panel and ask everybody here what that moment was for them when they first maybe hit their head on the glass ceiling, recognized there was a problem, and said, I want to change this, whether early on in your career or more recently?
So
We can start with you, yes.
Okay. Well, there are several different junctures in my career, so I'm not going to go back and tell the one about USA because I think that it was. I'm a person that wrote a master's thesis in the 60s about geosynchronous orbiting satellites. I know you all think that's really sexy out there. I know you would have gone the same way I did. I thought it was just really a very sexy technology that could bring programming to people around the world. So I'll suffice it to say it took 7 years to get this idea to the launch pad because we couldn't use satellites for commercial purposes in the United States. There are long stories about it, but it was 10 or 20,000 hours of hard work to get to go and to launch USA, which was an all-sports network called Madison Square Garden Sports in 1977. So there were a lot of barriers, some of them regulatory, to overcome, but that's not actually the story I want to tell because when I left USA Networks and the Sci-Fi Channel, which is also one of my channels, in 1998, President Clinton asked me to chair the National Women's Business Council, which is a presidential commission, but I wasn't really interested in it because the reason I wasn't interested in it is because it was generally to report procurement for the federal government for women's businesses would get business with the federal government, which I think is fine. It's just not me. I'm a big business person, and I wanted to get women into privately funded capital, and I told him that. So he said, okay, as long as you provide the reports to Congress. I said, no problem. So I got this idea that I looked around, did a lot of research, and every venture capitalist I asked said they never saw any women. I began to realize it wasn't women weren't being rejected, they just weren't there. They weren't in the mix. And that, in 1999, $104 billion was invested in venture capital. 1.7% went to women. Okay? I said, somebody's got to change this picture, so who else? I guess this is something that I could try to do. Flash forward to today, we select, train, and present women to raise venture capital in scalable businesses, technology, digital, media, biotech, devices, diagnostics, clean tech, green tech, those types of businesses. E-commerce and social media are among those. And today, well, we've presented 503 companies to market in the 12 years and have fantastic statistics. But what I was going to say is why I brought this up is because we can overcome, sort of the gap in the marketplace. Today, 12% of the money in venture capital does back women. We're making progress. It's going to take a lot more work, but we're later to the table than the guys were. They were there earlier in the 60s and 70s with some of the technology companies, but we're coming on, I think, with the participation of a lot of women who are starting to invest as well as be entrepreneurs. They're investing in young startup companies. And I'll leave it there saying that I think it's the bringing together the collective resources of entrepreneurs, investors, and these wonderful co-panelists, the venture capitalists, which we try to get the companies up to the size where they want to invest in them too. So I'll leave it at that. But we have to look at the positive and how we can collectively energize and build this market.
Right, and that is indeed a very positive note. Joy?
So I think there were sort of 2 points in my career when I felt like, oh my God, I am in a minority here. And I went to an Orthodox Jewish day school. I was the only girl in the advanced Talmud class. I was used to sort of being the only one in the room. But then I went to law school and half my class was women. It was mid-'80s and women were going to law school in droves. And then I got to my 400 partner firm and there were 3 female partners. And I kind of looked up and I said, whoa, what is going on here? There's something very, very wrong about this. And honestly, my reaction to that was, I got to get out of this. This is not the right profession for me. Because I looked up at the women who were the partners and they looked absolutely miserable. They were playing by the rules that were set by the men, which was work all the time, have someone else take care of the household. And they just didn't seem happy to me. It didn't seem like a lot of fun. And I was like, I got to get out of this as fast as I possibly can. And then a career in television, which was sort of the bulk of my early career, was all women. I mean, I was at MTV Networks. Judy McGrath was our president. At the time, it was actually Judy and Sarah Levinson were the co-presidents of the network. It was like all women. It was fantastic. We were powerful. We were equal. We were running things. Felt really, really great. My 2 startups were male-dominated for sure, but women had a voice. But nothing prepared me for entering the venture capital world, where all of a sudden, again, it was like looking up and seeing the 397 male partners, and it's not, the statistics are a little bit better than that, and the 3 women partners, and thinking, wow, okay, something has to change here. So on a good note, I think, so I've been doing this for about a year. I exited out of Daily Motion. We sold it to France Telecom. It was an opportunity to sort of change my life and do something different. And I thought, what better than to do something that actually could influence the future lives of women and the careers of women than being an investor. So that was a big motivator. There were other motivators. That was a very big motivator for me doing what I'm doing now. And there is an impact of having women at a firm. We had 1 female CEO in our portfolio when I joined the firm. The firm has been around for 15 years. It's a year, and it's not all me, but I think just having a woman in the room. We now have 3 female CEOs in 1 year. So I think there is something to be said for just being in the room and having a voice. And I do also think, on a very positive note, that there is something great going on, because we are funding female CEOs. Some of them, this teeny little percentage of them, will have big exits, and they will become angel investors and perhaps venture capitalists, and the cycle will get better and better over the years. So I feel like we're kind of at the beginning of that in this sort of tech funding world, but I am actually feeling very cautiously optimistic about it.
Mm-hmm. And last but not least, Megan, who we were talking before actually, and we figured out by basically counting the number of employees at Kleiner Perkins, that Kleiner Perkins is most likely above average in terms of the amount of women employed there, both on the partner side and the operations side. So
Right. I mean, expanding on the cautious optimism that Joy was just talking about, I'm going to be a little bit of a contrarian, because from my own personal experience, I don't feel like I've ever hit a glass ceiling. My first boss at Google, who was a VP, was a woman. She was on the leadership team. Subsequently at Square, there were plenty of women. I was on the leadership team. And then, of course, going into Kleiner Perkins, where about 25% of our partners are women, I have always felt surrounded by women in the enterprise, regardless of which side of the table it was on. So where I really started to identify and feel that there was a problem was only in the last 2 months. And what Lauren didn't mention is I joined Kleiner about 2.5 months ago, so it's relatively new. And that's because I sit during the week and I meet with, on average, between 15 and 20 companies. And it is a lucky week. It is a good week when maybe 1 or 2 of those entrepreneurs are women. And I'm in, being a new partner, see everything mode. It's not like I'm looking at deeply technical or very, very specific markets that might be more dominated by men. You know, if you're emailing me, I'm probably going to see you right now, because I'm looking at the broad landscape and identifying trends that are interesting to me. So that dearth of women sitting across from me at the table as entrepreneurs is what is really concerning to me. And so what I want to focus on, and what I think we all want to focus on, is how can we solve that problem, that there's more women coming to the table on both sides.
Pipeline. That's it. More pipeline.
that's right. Now, do you think that the bigger issue, or perhaps it's both, is that women need to be bolder in their approach to these sorts of things? Or is it that maybe some of the overt sexism that some of you may have encountered early on in your career is still present in some environments?
I don't think it's the sexism challenge that you were raising, at least not today, and I can't speak to a different era or a different time. I think that we need to be bolder, not just as women, but as men, in raising role models as venture capitalists and as entrepreneurs who are women. The phrase is, you can't be what you don't see, and I completely agree with that sentiment. I don't think you see a lot of women in venture capital because there haven't been a lot of successful women venture capitalists. I was mentioning to Lauren before this panel that it's possible, it's very possible that subconsciously I wound up at Kleiner because Mary Meeker, who is my partner at Kleiner, was on my board at Square. And so I knew her and I was familiar with her and I looked up to her and I really have a tremendous amount of respect for her. I think the same is true on the side of the entrepreneurs and of the founders. There are a tremendous number of fantastic women founders in tech and elsewhere. Marissa Mayer is the one that is obviously raised sort of publicly a lot, but there's a number of other fantastic women in tech that we just don't talk enough about. And I think that the more we can build brands and bring visibility to the women who are entrepreneurs and who are in tech, as well as in VC, the more funding and the more entrepreneurship you'll see from women.
I think you're right. When we started Springboard Enterprises, which is a venture catalyst organization, not a fund per se, we connect women entrepreneurs with funds. One of the primary elements that we have to focus on helping women come to market is how they present themselves. Because men can know 25% of the data, and you'd think that they were gurus in their business. Women tend to want to know 100% of everything about their business, and they still are reluctant to brag about who they are. And I'm going to give you an example. We had a woman a number of years ago present at Springboard who was in a biomedical company. And she presented her whole, it came to the boot camp. We do boot camps for our entrepreneurs, as Joy knows, she's participated in them. And we record them when they first come in, and at the end of the day of the boot camp, we record them again, so we see the difference. Did they learn something that day, right? So she comes up and she gives her whole presentation about her biomedical firm, that device that was going to record your vital signs. So if you're a competitor, you would be able to improve your competition by the food you eat and all this sort of thing. She gets finished with it, and she failed to mention that she's an astronaut and a physician. And her name is Mae Jemison. And she's just been awarded the DARPA Prize for exploring the universe of space travel for the next 100 years. And we are honoring her at our dinner this year. But Mae, we went like, Mae, how could you get up there and not start off, my name is Mae Jemison and I am an astronaut. So so remember the story when you're telling your little elevator pitch to people. First of all, you got to capture their interest with one concise sentence so that they'll pay attention to you. And don't forget about who you are, because women are a little bit more reluctant. We're a little bit more reluctant to brag about ourselves. So just remember that.
I have a boy and a girl at home, so I feel like my home is a science experiment, like a gender science experiment that I live absolutely every day. And I have a son who is not the best student and a girl who is like a straight A student. She is the one
after mom, of course.
Totally beats herself up if she gets, a 97 on a test. My son, I got an 88. I rock. Like the whole, it is, the attitude. And so I think this whole sort of confidence building of women is an important thing. But there's one thing I think that came up out of what you said that I think is really important and sort of a takeaway. We should be giving takeaways. The importance of networks and networking. So you're at Kleiner because of Mary Meeker. I'm at DFJ because I went to high school. I was in the advanced Talmud class with one of my partners. And he thought, wow, she's like the smart girl, right? And I kind of want to be friends with her for the rest of my life. And that's kind of what happened. And so I don't think women leverage their networks as well as men do right now. And the importance of that, it just can't be overstated. There's talent and education and everything else I'm sure everyone in this room brings to the table. Probably your most valuable asset is your human network. And that is how you're going to get deals done, find the right people to hire into your organizations, get the right meetings with VCs. That's how you're going to make it happen. And you have to be bold about asking favors and just putting yourself in front of people. And, when I was at Daily Motion, it was this teeny little pirated video site that I took over here, and we grew it to about 15 million uniques in the US only. So it was, pretty good story, pretty hard to do. But I had to go around to everyone I knew from all my days working within sort of the studio system at Viacom and ask them favors. And if I hadn't been willing to leverage my network in that way, we would have been out of business because they would have sued us out of existence, basically.
That is the number one thing that we teach at Springboard is human capital. Human capital is the most precious resource you can have. And that's what Joy is talking about. You have to have human capital before you get financial capital. But I wanted to go back to your opening remarks about the 1.5 times, women are producing companies at 1.5 times. What we're talking about here are scalable companies that generally have some technology driving them. And I think people have to understand the difference between a lifestyle company, an organic growth company, and a high growth company. Because knowing the difference of, where you can build, how you can build your business, how large it can get, understanding the competition that you're in. And it's fine to be an organic company and a lifestyle company, but just understand that you're not going to get funded by a VC. They don't fund those kind of businesses generally. But angels will. Angel investors, and one of the things that we've really seen build over the last decade is that we're building the number of women angel investors, and angel investors have all different kinds of interests, and will fund even craft companies and local stores and a lot of other things, as well as high growth companies. So there's just just understand what kind of company you envision, and then match it up with the marketplace, because if you don't and you go try to get venture and you're really not a scalable business, you'll find a lot of rejection, and it could be somewhat depressing to go and present all the time and never get any feedback that was positive. Just know what your market is. I just wanted to have people understand the difference of the different kinds of businesses.
No, that's a very good point. So we've talked a lot about pipeline. We've talked a lot about women, sort of getting more women in startups. Interesting thing happened this past spring at the Wall Street Journal's Women in the Economy conference, which Kay was in attendance at, actually was a co-chair at. And we led off the conference with the CEO of General Motors speaking, who happened to be a man. So I personally have not been to many women's conferences where we led off with a good old boy from Detroit speaking, but it was a scheduling thing, I'm pretty sure. And but it was really interesting, and he was touting a lot of GM's female friendliness in the company. And a woman stood up when he was done speaking, and many of you may recognize the name. It was Carol Bartz, who was most recently CEO of Yahoo, and had a long career in tech prior to that as well. And she said, I think the problem is that women don't want to help other women. And so she sort of struck a nerve with the audience, and people immediately started to refute that or agree with that. And so I'd like to bring up that topic as well, which is, do you agree with that? And if a woman encounters that, how to get beyond it?
Personally, that's never been my experience, right? And I'm, fairly long in my career, but by no means have a lot of years in different industries behind me. The women that I've worked with at Genentech when I was in school, at Google, at Square, and most recently at Kleiner have been nothing but supportive. But I also want to say the men have been nothing but supportive too. And in fact, when I think about my career and the steps I took and the people that made me successful and who took a chance on me and gave me opportunity, they were all men, all of them. And I think that that's important to recognize, because it's not just women helping women. I also think that there is a shift, perhaps generational, of men helping women as well.
Yeah, it's interesting. I was at DLD Women this year in Munich, and one of the European commissioners, or whatever, the EU commissioners, was a woman, spoke, and there's a lot going on in Europe. I don't know if people are aware, with quotas on boards and stuff like that.
Was that Vivian Redding?
Yes. And she said, bring the boys along. That was her key message of the day, which I thought was really interesting. Like, don't forget about the boys. And again, being the mother of a son who is like, notwithstanding his, bravado, a lovely human being, yeah, bring the boys along. They can be your biggest advocates. And I, too, I have to say, have not found women to be contrarian in any way. Like, I think if I had to think about my mentors, My primary one was a man. I think given sort of my age and the length of my career, that makes sense. There weren't a lot of women ahead of me, really. But so it happens to be a man. But I think there was like circa mid-90s in MTV, women VPs. We are all still very, very, very good friends and really promoting each other's careers. I mean, really, really promoting each other's careers. So I have not found that either, I'll be honest. I just haven't.
I think it is largely a generational thing. I think Carol is from the generation, my own same generation I'm from, that really didn't have any. There weren't enough of us out there. There were very few women out there, and I think there was a sort of a prevailing feeling like I made it, so good luck. It was really hard to get here, and I'm not giving up my spot for you, because there was a kind of a thing in the marketplace like if a woman had that's the only job that that's the one thing that woman could have. So one woman has to leave. In fact, on boards of corporations, that happened for a long time. There would be one woman on the board. I myself have been in that position, and they won't ask another woman to be on the board unless that woman leaves. So there was a prevailing, that was prevailing, but that's not today. And that's why I was saying there's enough critical mass in the marketplace, and I find women are very supportive of other women today. It's really fortunate. It's a generational thing. It's a critical mass thing. There are enough of us out there, and I really think that this is why the change is starting to happen and accelerate. So I think it's a lot more productive for women they want to help each other, and they will, because we have power. This is another message I would like to leave with you. We all have power. Each of us as individuals have some power. We have networks. We know people. No matter what part you are in your career, we have to know when to exert our power on behalf of other women or our colleagues. That's important for women to learn. Mm-hmm. You have a position that's a powerful position, a platform. You've got to use it really,
so it seems
to help others.
Based on the answers you just heard, so there's a shift. We've identified the shift. We've identified that, in a sense, we have arrived, right? And now the next step is getting our businesses off the ground. If you are a small business founder, and getting the funding that you need. So let's turn it to what you're looking for. Right, I think there's this perception, as you said, well, it's got to be a lifestyle company. If it's a woman, we just shop. That's all we do, right? So it's got to be a shopping company. Mm-hmm. It's not that. It's not that. What are you looking for with the entrepreneurs you're either guiding through the fund, through your, I shouldn't call it a fund because it's not a fund, but through Springboard, or that you're actually a catalyst that you're actually looking to fund?
Sure. So as I mentioned earlier, I do internet investing at Kleiner, so that's where my focus is, and my advice is somewhat specific to that, but can be applied to other industries as well. And what I'm looking for is no different in a man than it is in a woman, and vice versa. There's also not a magic sort of algorithm out there that you can churn in and decide whether or not something's a good investment. So it's parameters, but it's primarily 4 things. One, an entrepreneur with a vision of the future that commands that their product or service exists. Which means that they have to be able to articulate a vision of the future where what they are building is impossible to not have. And that means you really have to go after big markets, to what you were saying earlier. This isn't about having a small service or a small feature. It's really around having a big market. 2, you have to have a product or service that is innovative and not iterative. We do tend to see products and services that are very slight deviations from existing products and services where the innovation, either technical or the insight that's being capitalized on, isn't obvious. And we need someone to tell us why what they are now doing is so much better than what could have ever been done before because they have this new insight or this new technology. In many ways, I'm suspicious of pitches where I understand right away. It needs to feel inevitable at the end of the conversation, but if I get it right away, then so have a lot of other people.
You've heard of it before.
Yeah.
Right.
It's around the people, so the entrepreneur themselves and the people that they've chosen to build a team and a company with. I think that you need to understand your limitations and find people who complement them, and that's a lot of self-awareness and confidence, but it is the people at the end of the day that we're backing, and then the market, and then the product, and then finally it's the deal. And that's what I would sort of most want to leave you with. I think that what entrepreneurs in general don't do enough of, and specifically women entrepreneurs, going back to Joy's comment about networks, is being really, really thoughtful about who they want investing in their company, who they want to bring in for the long term, and not saying, okay, I'm just going to spray every single venture capitalist out there with my deck and hope that someone bites, but actually doing research, thinking about who can add the most value to help build a company for the long term.
What she said. So, I mean, I agree with absolutely everything you said. We are I should add, we're focused on seed and early stage investments. So it's maybe a teeny bit different in that I would say the order of our criteria starts with people, because we make sometimes very small investments in companies, and sometimes we are betting on sort of the rider, not the horse, if I have that analogy correct. We're just saying, okay, we love this person, we believe in this person, and we think even if this might not be exactly right, they're going to do something great, and we want to be involved with this person. And we have several investments that have Dropio, this company we just sold to Facebook. The guy, Sam Lesson, who's now running Timeline at Facebook, it was an investment in him. It wasn't so much an investment in Dropio per se when we made that investment. So that's an example.
Hire, as we like to call it in the tech press.
Yeah, I mean, it was like, Sam, how could you not invest in Sam? And that's what we did. And we didn't know how well Dropio would do. And in fact, it never got really, really that huge. But Facebook bought him, and that was a good exit for us. So
yeah, and I think that those four components I mentioned before, depending on where in the life cycle of investing you are, determines the priority of those things.
Right.
So I completely agree.
Yeah.
When we do seed investments, it's on the people because the product inevitably is going to change. When you're doing late stage growth investments, it's really on the market and your belief that you can pour, gasoline on that fire.
Absolutely. That said, even at the seed stage, which I'm thinking maybe some of you are developing companies that are sort of ripe for seed stage investment, market is really, really important. I mean, if you're looking at a market that's really small, we do tend to see more women than men with this problem, I have to say that are not thinking about large enough markets. If it's not, I don't want to use the word infinitely scalable, because what the hell does that actually mean? But sort of like, I'm sorry, I cursed on air or something, sorry. Take that back, bleep. So, but, it needs to be big. We as investors can't invest in something where we can see the end. We need to, sort of almost not be able to see the end. So this market is really, really, really important as well. And I would say for us as early stage investors, product is very important, but it's the third. Because we believe that if we have the right team and they're facing the right market, that product will iterate. And we pretty much know that. And there are very few of our companies that exited that are the same product as when we invested in them, because we invest so early.
Okay, what are you looking for when you look to guide women through Springboard?
Well, our selection process is very important. It's a very competitive process. We look for the person first, and we look for the business sector second. We know the business plans are going to change. Nobody comes with a completely correct business plan, but that's part of the process. There's an iterative process of learning, and people have to learn to pivot if they are off sync with the marketplace. But we do look for the people, because we stay with our companies. And now, bear in mind, we brought 503 companies to market so far, and these companies have raised over $5.5 billion. So, they're scalable companies. You probably know some of them: iRobot, Zipcar, Constant Contact, a lot of biotech companies that probably aren't generally known, but very successful. And we're betting on the person first. It's very clear who's got sort of the goods to take. When you see a lot of different people, as all of us up here do, it starts to become very clear very early if that's a person that can really put the right team together and really deliver the goods. So you're looking for that those unique characteristics that not only say this person has a grasp and a command of what their business can be, has a vision to take it a long distance, but can get the right people around the table with her. That's, and so then the tweaking begins with the coaches and the training that we bring to the table. And we have a lot of serial entrepreneurs who come back and start other companies. They get it. They understand, they've been through all the gates. They get how to play the game, and they come back. And we've got companies that are on their third, fourth, and fifth businesses very successfully, which is very fascinating. And those women invest in women coming behind them, just as somebody mentioned here earlier. I think Joy did. they're coming back to invest in other women that are coming up with their companies. It's our network, and we can grow it.
Back to the pipeline. So since you mentioned it's really the people that you're investing in, I want to talk about skill sets. One of the things that always emerges from the Wall Street Journal conference for women is P&L, right? We're looking for women that have P&L experience to raise them up to the C-suite. We're hearing a lot about coding, right? And other sort of just science and tech classes that women should be starting in perhaps at an earlier age. Are there certain skill sets that you're looking for in that entrepreneur, or does that not matter?
To me, it's less of a question of skill sets and more of attributes, because no matter what type of business that person is starting, there's things that they're going to have to learn along the way. So I want someone who has an openness and an excitement around learning how to build a company and doing that with other people, investors, and their own team. The single most important attribute for me is I call it the desire to take over the world, more or less. And you can just tell in a conversation, does this person want to dominate this market, product, segment, whatever it is? Do they have a vision, as I mentioned earlier, a vision for the future that they absolutely can't see themselves not being a part of? And that's not having P&L experience. That's not even the ability to code. That is just deep, deep domain expertise and obsession, really.
I couldn't agree more. I think what I always say, sometimes we have entrepreneurs come in and they haven't even done any kind of, even like a 1 year, 6-month plan, no financial projections whatsoever.
I don't mean to interrupt you either, Joy, but also keep MBAs too, right? And we're seeing that more and more females are college graduates over men, but then when it comes to MBA programs, females are still lagging men. So keeping, should women go get an MBA?
Well, I mean, so in our world, like they'll do these financial, so we say, I always send them back and I say, if I'm at all interested in the company for reasons we've all talked about, I always send them back and I say to them, show me 6 to 12 months. And I don't really care how well they use Excel or what those numbers even are. What I really care about is their thought process. Like, I really want to understand how their minds work. And that will come out in what they do in that exercise. And the sort of domination thing will come out too, because there's always this little tricky thing of like, have I projected too high or have I projected too low? And I don't think you can project high enough in some ways, because I want someone who's going to come in and be really optimistic about the market. So, within reason, obviously, of course. But again, it's about kind of how they think. And are they, innate intelligence is, really important in this.
I just wanted to address the MBA question, because I got to tell you, you don't learn entrepreneurship in a book. You can't learn it in a book.
I feel like a round of applause right now.
You've got to do it. Yeah. And it's okay if you're an MBA, but that's not going to make you an entrepreneur. Because I'm on the board of Babson, full disclosure, also the University of Wisconsin. Great business schools. Babson's #1 in entrepreneurship. They actually make people have to form companies and start companies there. You have to get on the ground. You have to do it. And I think that is the only way you can really learn the lessons of an entrepreneur, is actually get out there and do it. So if you want an MBA, that's great, but you're going to get book learning, and that may be good for being on Wall Street, may be great for being in corporations, it may be good training for being an entrepreneur, but it's not going to make you an entrepreneur. Mm-hmm. You can only be an entrepreneur by going out there and doing it, because, boy, it is one heck of a roller coaster ride. But hey, for those of us who like those exciting rides at the amusement parks, it's a great life. It's a lot of fun.
Did you have a remark? Or no? Okay. There's some data that shows there's a correlation between high-performing women in the workplace and women being the breadwinners at home and also the primary caregivers, right? So for very highly successful women, that could be the case. That presents a unique challenge, right?
Positive correlation or negative correlation?
I think it's a positive thing, but it also means, in your quest for world domination, you may not be sleeping very much. And I'll actually...
Anybody who's dominating the world is not sleeping a lot.
Right.
Doesn't matter about the gender.
But when we talk about these women's topics, inevitably the work-life balance question does come up, right? Yeah. So... Joy, I'll start with you. I mean,
so I kind of hate that question, I'll be honest.
Yeah, and I don't want to be
I want to get to a point where we're not asked that question anymore, I think, is when we win. And I have always been the primary breadwinner in my marriage. From day one, when I kind of fell in love with the person I fell in love with, I knew that would be the case. And that's worked out just fine for us. And I did feel at points that we were sort of a science experiment as a family, that he was the primary caretaker of our kids, and I was out there, and I was traveling a heck of a lot. An international job at MTV, I should mention. So I was, 5 countries, 5 days kind of person for MTV. And that was very trying, obviously. I do think that we're getting to a point where that question should be irrelevant. That is the way I'd like to answer it, and I'm hoping that we are getting there. It's not actually the case yet, but I'm hoping that we're sort of getting to that point. I do think men coming up are assuming more responsibility in the household. I see that. I think that's a really positive trend. I think families should figure out what works for them.
I think that, we've just seen the reaction in the marketplace with Marissa Mayer going to Yahoo as CEO and being pregnant and expecting her first child on October 10th. She's being honored at our dinner Springboard on October 24th here in New York, and she said, "Oh, great, it'll be my son's first trip." And I'm like, okay, great. I mean, I say it because so much emphasis was put on the fact that she accepted a CEO position while she's pregnant. Right. And I want her to succeed enormously, because I don't want it to come back like, well, she shouldn't have taken that job because she was expecting. And, unfortunately, it could come back to that. So we've all got to root for her to succeed, because it's going to be, it will be in the headlines if she doesn't, that this was a mistake. And so putting it to bed, it's also, success will also finally put it to bed, and it should be. We have women come and present who are obviously expecting, and they get funding. 83% of our entrepreneurs out of those 500 get funding. And some of them have been expecting, and God bless them, they figured out how to do it, and they keep pushing on, and thankfully some people saw their drive and looked at it not as an impediment, but somebody who was really committed. If she's going to go out there and fundraise while she's 6 months pregnant.
I know we could probably let this panel speak all day about
Should we
funding.
take some questions?
I believe
Do we have time for that?
Just in the interest of time, because we're backing up on our other panels, we're going to have to move on.
So no questions, but you can snag some of us afterwards if you'd like and ask us your questions, or elite panelists here. So, all right, well, Megan, Joy, and Kay, thank you so much. It's been an absolute pleasure. I hope that you guys have enjoyed it as much as I have. Thank you so much. And, keep working, keep raising money, keep funding, keep supporting. All right.